Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Thank you for joining us today. We have an exciting new story to share with you, so let's dive in. I'm Vincent, and I've always believed that trust is the foundation of love. Without trust, love is merely a facade. This belief was put to the test in my own life. I was once engaged to a woman named Casey. We had built a life together over the years, but everything unraveled when I discovered she was still seeing another man behind my back. The betrayal shattered me. In the upcoming moments, I will recount how it all unfolded. It all began when I first met Casey at a friend's housewarming party. Our initial conversation was simple, yet it evolved into hours of captivating dialogue. We kept in touch, initially meeting for casual coffee dates and occasional lunches. As time passed, our interactions grew more meaningful, transitioning into dinners, weekend get-togethers, and late-night phone calls. Eventually, we officially became a couple. In our relationship, Casey and I took our time to develop something strong and substantial over more than 3 years. By the second year, it had become a regular occurrence for Casey to spend most weekends at my place, from Friday evenings through to Sunday nights. This arrangement felt natural and was mutually welcomed. Although she never permanently moved in, we were content with the balance it struck, allowing us to be together comfortably without rushing into cohabitation. While I occasionally visited Casey at her smaller place, the idea of living together there full-time didn't seem practical. A quality I admired in Casey was her openness. From the beginning of our relationship, she freely shared details about her past, including relationships, mistakes, lessons learned, and family dynamics. She was particularly transparent about a childhood friend she regarded as a brother and emphasized that they had never been romantically involved. I trusted her wholeheartedly without overthinking it. She hadn't given me any reason to doubt her honesty, and when someone is transparent, you tend to believe them. As our relationship progressed, we got engaged and began discussing wedding plans, honeymoon destinations, guest lists, and our future home. I was emotionally invested and committed financially, diligently saving and planning to provide her with the life I believed she deserved. It seemed like we were on the same page, but I soon realized that appearances can be deceiving. One Friday evening, Casey arrived at my place as usual with her weekend bag, bringing a sense of comfort. During dinner, she casually mentioned that she needed to return to her parents the next day due to family reasons. I reassured her that it was okay, respecting her privacy regarding her family matters as she didn't often elaborate. Poking around in people's personal matters when they don't feel like sharing, and she'd never given me a single reason not to believe her. After dinner, like we usually did, we moved over to the couch and queued up a movie we had been meaning to watch all week. Halfway through, I felt her head slowly lean onto my shoulder. She had fallen asleep, something she often did when she was exhausted. I just let her rest there, gently wrapped my arm around her, and watched the movie to the end. But throughout the movie, her phone kept lighting up with no sounds. At first, I brushed it off as her grew chest. When the movie finally ended and the credits began to roll, I leaned forward, planning to gently wake her so we could move to the bed. Before I tapped her shoulder, my eyes went to her phone. I picked it up, just instinct, I guess, and the first thing I saw on the lock screen wasn't what I expected. Previews of the messages were not the kind of words a brother sends to you. Now, we had each other's passwords that way. We both agreed early in the relationship that accessing each other's phones was a gesture of trust. Without much thought, I entered her code and unlocked it. What I discovered next is difficult to describe. The messages from her supposed childhood friend were not lighthearted or casual. They were flirtatious, intimate, rich with emojis, inside jokes, and most concerning plans. Among them, I fixated on a message from him that read, "Can't wait to see you tomorrow," followed by her response, a heart emoji. Then she informed him I'll be at my family's place. Everything set. This message was sent just a few hours earlier, seemingly while we were having dinner. I chose not to wake her immediately to confront her. Instead, I sat there, watching her peaceful sleep. My mind was racing and my body felt as though it had shut down internally. A single question dominated my thoughts. Was I insufficient? Why did she deceive me to spend a weekend with another man? I remained in silence, observing the woman who I believed I knew deeply. The unraveling of our relationship began without warning. As I woke up the next morning, she stirred beside me in bed. Everything seemed normal for a moment when she leaned over and kissed my cheek. Getting up, she went about her routine, brushing her teeth and packing her things from my place into her overnight bag. Throughout her movements, she expressed her fondness for me, making plans for our future meetings. Yet, her words felt rehearsed, as if she had practiced them before to ensure their believability. I chose to remain silent. observing her to see how far she would carry on with the facade. Eventually, she stopped and took a moment to truly look at me. Perhaps she realized that I was not playing the expected role in the script she had prepared. She was accustomed to my silence. As she tilted her head and inquired, "Are you okay?" I simply shrugged, using my usual evasion tactic. She chuckled, unaware of the shift that had occurred. Playfully, she remarked, "Already missing me, huh?" Playfully nudging my arm in an attempt to ease the tension. I mustered a small smile, realizing the weight of the silence lingering in my chest as she laughed and zipped up her bag. Grabbing her belongings, she headed towards the door, and I instinctively followed, as our unspoken routine dictated. Opening the door for her, she typically would flash a smile or give a quick kiss before departing. However, this time as she stood just beyond the threshold, I didn't utter the usual farewells. With a steady gaze, I spoke directly to her goal. "Best of luck on your date." I witnessed her emotions change rapidly in real time. It seemed as though her face struggled to settle on a single emotion as she struggled to process what she had just heard. She began to stammer and asked, what are you talking about?" Her voice quivered slightly, but before she could continue, I raised my hand gently to signal her to pause. "There's no need," I stated before closing the door. The moment I turned away and shut the door, the brief silence was soon interrupted by loud and desperate knocking. It was as if she couldn't believe what had transpired and urgently wanted to rectify it. The knocking escalated into sobs as she pleaded through the door, her voice breaking, urging me to listen. Meanwhile, my phone began to vibrate repeatedly. Without even needing to check, I knew it was her, and indeed, her messages poured in one after the other. "Please open the door. Let me explain. It wasn't what it seemed. I'm not going anywhere." I found myself paralyzed, staring at the words on my screen. They kept coming, but none of them resonated with me. Despite her attempts to minimize its significance, her actions contradicted her words. Why did she feel the need to deceive and conceal her interactions under the guise of family obligations? The thought of her planning a weekend getaway with another man left me emotionally numb. I felt trapped in a web of uncertainty. Was our entire relationship a facade? Did she reciprocate my feelings, or was I merely a temporary fixture while she pursued someone else? Questions swirled in my mind. Had he always been a lingering presence? Was life just a convenient choice, chosen for stability and security? I remained silent, refusing to respond to her pleas and attempts to explain herself. After hours of tears, relentless knocking, and desperate messages, she eventually departed. However, this was not the end of the turmoil. Weeks passed, but the impact of her actions lingered, leaving me grappling with unresolved emotions. However, Casey's persistence did not waver. Each morning during the initial days following our disagreement, my phone would be flooded with messages. Dawn was her attempt at concealing her desperation. The texts were blunt and unvarnished. They arrived at all hours, with pleas like, "Please talk to me, I didn't mean to hurt you." Let me explain. Sometimes they were as simple as, "I miss you." In the dead of night, she once confessed, I don't deserve a second chance, but I'll keep asking until you tell me to stop." Despite the constant notifications, I chose not to block her. Most times, I didn't even read the messages in full. I only glanced at the previews on my lock screen before setting my phone aside. The longing to respond lingered within me, as I had once cared deeply for her. However, every time I nearly succumbed to that urge, I recalled the decisions she had made. Then, one weekend, a persistent knock echoed through my door. Initially unmoved, I remained seated on the couch, silently hoping she would leave. But she didn't. She remained steadfastly outside. After a moment, the knock sounded again, this time a touch more insistent. And then her voice carried through the door, reaching me in the quiet of my home. "Vincent, please listen. I'm not here to argue. I just want to have a conversation." When she approached me, I remained silent, hoping she would eventually give up and leave. However, she stayed there for more than 15 minutes. Finally, her voice broke as she admitted, "You were right. I made a mistake. Please let me explain." Reluctantly, I opened the door and allowed her to share her side of the story. She confessed to feeling emotionally conflicted, claiming it wasn't love, but a longing for a past chapter in her life. She admitted to deceiving me, thinking she could get away with it without me finding out. She tried to downplay the situation, insisting it was insignificant, but her need to lie revealed otherwise. Despite my emotions, I remained silent, giving her the space to express herself fully. When she finished speaking and awaited my response, the only question that truly mattered to me surfaced. "Would you have been honest if I hadn't found out?" I was unaware of her frozen demeanor. Her mouth slightly opened, then closed. She gazed down at the floor, her lips trembling, as she remained silent. Not even a whisper escaped her. The truth resonated louder in that silence than in anything she had spoken. Had I not checked her phone and read those messages, she would have proceeded with her plans for the weekends, smiled to my face afterward, and continued planning our wedding as if nothing had occurred. I retreated quietly. She glanced up, her eyes hopeful, as if I might say it was all right, that I would forgive her. However, I couldn't. I remarked, "This engagement was founded on deceit, and I cannot construct a marriage on such falsehoods." As she attempted to protest, I raised my hand calmly. I had already moved past the point of shouting. I simply urged her, "Please refrain from contacting me, do not visit, and never show up again. Let this be the final encounter." Subsequently, I returned indoors and secured the door. She lingered for a moment, anguish evident in her eyes before departing. It is said that love is rooted in trust, and I never imagined myself in a situation where I'd have to question everything. But upon discovering Casey's betrayal, it felt like not just trust, but also love had been shattered. It's surprising how you can be so certain of someone, make plans, invest time, energy, and emotions, only to have the ground pulled out from beneath you. The most painful part is realizing that the deception was not just a small mistake. It exposed a willingness to conceal significant truths. It made me question the authenticity of our supposedly honest moments and wonder how many other lies were lurking beneath the surface. Betrayal doesn't just destroy trust, it gradually erodes everything you believe to be true. I find myself revisiting past interactions and wondering if they were genuine. I'm not going to pretend that I have everything figured out or that I've completely moved on. I haven't. However, one thing I am certain of is that I deserve honesty. So I seek your advice. What would you do if you were in my position? Do you believe my approach was appropriate, or could I have taken a different action or overlooked something? Share your thoughts below. Let's discuss, as your insights might offer clarity to someone facing a similar situation, thereby helping them gain perspective.